On the 30th of January, 1933, this man became Chancellor of Germany. That night, his Nazis flaunted their swastikas through Berlin. For all civilized men, that hooked cross was to become a symbol of evil and terror. How did Adolf Hitler, the Nazi leader, rise to supreme power from obscurity? In 1929, industrial Germany had been hit by the Great World Depression. By the end of 1932, 6 million people were out of work. In despair, more and more people were attracted to political parties who appeared to offer simple solutions to appalling problems. Many joined the Communist Party. There were others who marched under the banner of the Nazis, a party looking for scapegoats to attack. Hitler, their leader, gave them targets: communists, Jews, democratic politicians. His stormtroopers carried the battle into the streets and beer halls. Chaos and violence suited Hitler's purpose. The more turmoil in the streets, the more the Germans would be likely to vote for a strong leader. Meanwhile, Hitler tried to appeal to all sections of German society. For the workers, he had one message.
Die intellektuellen Schichten haben mir den Mut gegeben, dieses gigantische Werk zu beginnen. Sondern das kann ich sagen, den Mut habe ich nur gefasst, weil ich zwei Schichten kannte, den Bauer und den deutschen Arbeiter.
His carefully planned campaigns took him all over Germany. People flocked to hear him. With the middle classes, he played on their fear of communism and the prospect of economic ruin, every bit as bad as they'd suffered in 1923. He tried to appeal to the people of all classes by denouncing the Treaty of Versailles and accusing the German politicians who'd signed it of betraying the fatherland. He gave Goebbels, an unscrupulous propagandist, the job of spreading the Nazi message. Hitler came to German industrialists for money. In return, he promised them a disciplined workforce and protection against communism. One way or the other, the Nazis found the money to finance 3 massive election campaigns between 1930 and 1932. Their tactics seemed to pay off. In May 1928, the Nazis had been just one of the several small parties in the Reichstag, the German parliament, with only 12 seats. But in September 1930, they increased that number to 107. In July 1932, they became the largest single party with 230 seats. But in November, they dropped back to 196, and it looked as if Hitler's bid for power might fail. But in the end, he was saved by President Hindenburg, a respected national hero. Hindenburg allowed himself to be persuaded that the Nazis could be tamed and made respectable if Hitler led a coalition government. And so, on January 30th, 1933, he appointed Hitler Chancellor of Germany. His first act was to call for another election. In his own mind, it was to be the last. His intent was the destruction of Parliament and the elimination of all other parties. But in public, he made a straight appeal for support. I ask of you, German people, that after you've given the other parties 14 years, you should give us 4. One week before the election, the Reichstag building went up in flames. This event suited the Nazis very well. Hitler blamed the communists and used the fire to persuade Hindenburg to sign a decree which gave the Nazis power to put their political opponents in prisons and concentration camps. Although the majority of Germans still didn't vote for Hitler's party, in the March elections, the Nazis gained 288 seats, their greatest number yet. The Nazis now dominated the Reichstag, where Goering, Hitler's ruthless right-hand man, was already president. The building was packed with Nazi stormtroopers. Hitler now wanted to be free to do as he wished. He demanded and got an enabling act, giving him power to make his own laws. Soon, all other political parties were abolished, and many of their leaders herded into concentration camps. They were to become places of brutality, horror, and death. But now Hitler faced problems in his own ranks. The stormtroopers, swollen to over 2 million men, wanted more say in how the country was run. In particular, their leader, Röhm, wanted to control the regular army. On June 30th, 1934, the night of the Long Knives, Röhm and many others were murdered in cold blood. The sinister Himmler and his black-shirted SS were Hitler's instruments of death. Himmler would later be given complete control of the concentration camps and the German secret police. Hitler justified the murders to the Reichstag. I ordered the leaders of the guilty shot. If anyone asks me why we didn't use the regular courts, I will reply, I alone during those 24 hours was the Supreme Court of Justice of the German people. That August, Hindenburg died. Immediately, Hitler made himself Führer, leader of the German nation. All soldiers now swore an oath of loyalty to him alone.
Dass ich den Führer des Deutschen Reiches und Volkes, Adolf Hitler, jederzeit Berlin-Zeit mein Leben einzusetzen. Die Partei ist Hitler. Hitler aber ist Deutschland, wie Deutschland Hitler ist. Hitler siegt!
As Führer, Hitler was now all-powerful in the Nazi Party and the German state. In 1934, at the giant Nuremberg rally, he reminded his audience of uniformed and faithful followers of what they've already achieved.
Der 6. Parteitag der Bewegung geht zu Ende. Was für Millionen Deutsche, die außerhalb unserer Reihen stehen, vielleicht nur als imposantestes Schauspiel politischer Machtentfaltung gewertet wird, war für die Hunderttausende der Kämpfer unendlich mehr.
Hitler's Germany was to be a nation of warriors, parades, and uniforms. There was no doubt in his mind what the future of the German people was to be. War and conquest. And the children of Nazi Germany, the Hitler Youth, were to play a big part in his scheme of things. At the age of 10, all had sworn a personal oath of loyalty to Hitler and were trained to be fit and well prepared for the future. Girls had to be healthy too. They'd one day become mothers of a so-called master race. Individuals didn't matter. They were dedicated to serve the Führer. Meanwhile, unemployment began to fall. The best jobs went to party members, and the supreme worker set the example. Many were put to public works, especially the new highways or autobahns. For others, there was more work in the factories. But this was designed not just to deal with unemployment, but to increase Germany's military strength. Rearmament, forbidden under the Treaty of Versailles, had begun in earnest. Hitler was confident he could get away with it. He started to build up a more powerful navy. The first planes of the Luftwaffe, the German Air Force, took to the air in full public view. New German tanks went on parade. The Nazis were beginning to show their strength. At the same time, they tightened their grip on the German people. More and more newspapers were controlled by the state. Goebbels, Hitler's propaganda chief, used the radio to continue the Nazi campaign of hatred against the Jews. The Nazis attacked Jewish property, forced Jews out of their jobs, and terrorized them on the streets. So began the systematic persecution which was to lead to the deaths of millions of Jews in the years to come. Only those citizens of supposedly pure German blood were allowed the honor of a Nazi wedding. Children were taught to hate the Jews. This was how Jews were presented in a primary school book. Jewish children were humiliated in front of their class. But at the time, the Führer himself was presented as a kind man whose pleasures were few and simple. The people listened to their leader. while Goebbels suggested that good Germans demonstrate their loyalty to their Fuhrer by putting out flags in his honor. The Nazis abolished free trade unions, but tried to bribe the workers with special holiday schemes and massive propaganda displays where they might even get the chance of seeing their Fuhrer in person. In March 1935, Hitler introduced universal military service. A vastly enlarged army was to be the instrument of his plan for the German domination of Europe. Exactly 1 year later, German troops entered the Rhineland, an area where the German army had been forbidden since 1919. This was yet another open defiance of those powers who defeated Germany in World War I, and neither France nor Britain was willing to stop him. It was a major triumph for Hitler. Nazi propaganda told the Germans that Hitler was freeing them from the shame of defeat and restoring their national honor. To many, despite the brutality of the regime, the claims of their leader sounded convincing. In the summer of 1936, at the Olympic Games in Berlin, Nazi Germany put itself on show to the world. Hitler and Goering came to watch the triumph of their so-called master race. But the supreme athlete of the Games was neither white nor German. An American, Jesse Owens, was black, and so in Nazi eyes inferior in every way. Jesse Owens won 4 gold medals, but Hitler did not stay to hang them around his neck. The Games had been a propaganda success. While they were on, cruelty and repression were pushed out of sight. Germany seemed to have recovered her strength under the Nazis. But what future did the tolling bell herald for the German people and for all of Europe?